So there are a lot of myths out there about being a full-time musician. From us just being money-wasting, drug-using party animals that's always gone and always on tour and have no life, to us just being outright horrible people. But are they really myths? Are some of these things actually true? In this video, I'm going to tell you 5 myths about being a full-time musician. So let's get to it. Hey, and welcome to Music Space, where we help working musicians just like you learn how to quickly and easily make a living with your craft. So if you're new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded. Now, before we get into this video, if you're a band, artist, or musician looking to make some serious money and build a huge fan base this year, I'm advising all bands and musicians and artists like this to start a YouTube channel today. And that's because YouTube is still the best way for bands and musicians to make a lot of money and build a huge fan base. And because of that, I've created the YouTube QuickStart course. This course is designed to help you get up and running and making money and building a huge fan base on YouTube really quickly. And the best part is, it's completely free and you can get instant access to it at the link in the description of this video. Okay, so the first myth about being a full-time musician or even a musician at all is that it's not a real job. Man, I cannot tell you how many times in my career as a full-time musician over the years that I've heard this from people. And this kind of thing is said not only from just outside people, but it tends to be said by people who are closest to you. And this is particularly the case with sort of the older generations where they grew up in a time where, you know, working with your hands and doing industrial work and things like that was the real work. And that's what provided income and helped you be able to support your family and all of that. And then being a musician or an artist or something like that is just thought of as some sort of hobby or pastime. But the truth about this is that being a full-time musician is really, really hard work. It takes perseverance, it takes dedication, it takes talent, it takes consistently sort of honing your skills and getting better over time periods. And just those few things alone, in a lot of ways, make it more difficult than people who have regular jobs. Like someone who has a job like data processing or something like that. There's nothing that you have to hone over, you know, years of time, and nothing that's going to be outdated if you stop learning it or stop doing it in 5 or 10 years. And even if it does, the companies that these people work for is probably going to provide that training for them for free. And that's not to say anything bad at all about people who work those sort of regular jobs. I'm just trying to make a comparison between like what a regular job is and what we do as artists and musicians on a regular basis. And another huge myth about full-time musicians and just really musicians in general is that we're all alcoholics and drug users. And I don't really know how this myth or stereotype even came to be. I'm sure that there are a lot of bands and artists and musicians who are alcoholics and drug users, but I'm not sure that that percentage of them is larger than the percentage of any other group of people. Maybe it's because of the sort of nightlife that we have where we're playing out in clubs and stuff at night, and that's what happens at clubs, a lot of drinking and stuff like that, so maybe that's where it came from. But this is a huge myth because it can't be further from the truth. The vast majority of musicians that I currently work with and have worked with over my career of 25-30 years have not been any sort of significant alcoholics or drug users. I myself am not an alcoholic or a drug user. It may surprise you to know that I've literally never been drunk a day in my life. And I've never even done any drugs, not even the smallest stuff. And I may not be a good example, I may be the exception to the rule, but again, even the people that I know and the people that I associate with, and even a lot of the musicians that I hear about, none of them are drug users and alcoholics and stuff like that. They have other problems and, you know, other things going on with them, but this is something that they're not. And another really big myth about being a full-time musician is that we don't have personal lives. And again, I think that this is one of those myths or stereotypes that just come from maybe us having a nightlife and us being gone at nights a lot of times to do gigs and shows and stuff like that. But again, this is one that's simply not true. A lot of my friends that are musicians and a lot of musicians that I work with, in fact, most of them have families and kids and stuff where they provide for their families, and they have personal lives where they have girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever, and they go out and they do things and they travel a lot. Really, it's just like any sort of normal couple or normal family. And even the musicians among us that are single still have like really huge personal lives where they go out with people, they have fun with their friends, they date, they have a social life, they do everything pretty much any normal person does. Being a musician in this case is really just like any other profession where you have to strive to maintain a balance between your personal life and your work life. Now, another myth about being a full-time musician and a musician period is something that I think even a lot of musicians ourselves really need to understand that it's actually a myth. And that is that you need to be young to succeed as a musician. And there would be a case made for this myth if we were having this conversation, say 15, 20, 30 years ago. Back then times were different, and one of the only ways that you could succeed is to get signed by a label. And it's true that a lot of those labels were looking for someone that was young. If you were over 30, and even 30 is young, but if you were pushing 30 and not in like your mid-20s or something like that, you were kind of on a downward slope where your chances of being successful as a musician was pretty nil. But even back then, this wasn't a rule. It was just sort of a thing that happened frequently. And you would still see a lot of older musicians get record deals and get signed to labels then. But nowadays, in our current society, this is completely a myth. I'm afforded the opportunity to talk to and speak with musicians of all ages quite frequently. And when I'm speaking to some of the older musicians, a lot of them are just getting started in their career and having success. That is the great part about the industry that we live in today. Like, it's not age dependent at all. Many musicians start their careers later in life and even continue them into their sort of senior years. One of my mentors that I came under as a young musician is in his mid-70s, and he's just released like 2 albums in the past year and a half, and he's killing it on social media and everything. And that's the great thing about what's happening now. The playing field has been leveled, so to speak. You no longer have to be the young, hot, 20-something-year-old trying to get a record deal. You can be in your 60s, your 50s, 60s, 70s, starting today and make a career out of being a musician. And not only make a career out of it, like actually do really well in that career. And I would even go as far as to say, in a lot of cases, you have an advantage of being older because you have experience, you have knowledge, you have awareness of things like business and how to operate, where you can kind of move through the process of succeeding really quickly. And speaking of business, it's like really important to know things about the music business and how to operate in the music business. And I've done quite a few videos about that, and you can check them out right here, right now.